Okay, we are starting the chapter 24 that deals with the kingdom Animalia. So now we're done with fungus. Plants we're not revisiting because we would have to do photosynthesis all over again. I don't think any of you want to do that. And now we're on to the animal kingdom. So there's just going to be some general features and some features that all animals have in common. So before we can start with our phyla in each one of in all the animals that belong, we do need to talk about some features that all animals have in common. So to start with, all of our ancestral animals are eukaryotic. So there's not going to be any prokaryotes. That was our bacteria. We left the prokaryotes a while back. Also, one of the features is that all animals are multicellular. So there's not going to be any unicellular organisms in this kingdom. Also, animals developed some adaptations in structure that allowed them to inhabit different habitats. Obviously, if you're a bird and you can fly, that's one habitat. We don't enjoy that particular type of environment. If you're a snake, they're in a completely different habitat. So, different habitats are going to lend to different features on animals. Certainly, fish are in this kingdom, and they're adapted for an aquatic environment, for um, to be able to extract oxygen from the water and to be able to swim in their environment. So, for the animal kingdom, we have numerous environments and a lot of adaptations to fit into those habitats. Now, when it comes to feeding and digestion, all animals are heterotrophic. So we're not going to run into anything that's capable of making its own food. None of the animals contain chloroplast or chlorophyll. And one of the features that figures in to actual feeding is the structure of an animal's mouth. Sometimes these animals are filter feeders where they're just filtering food from the water and their surroundings. One of the lowliest animals, or the lowliest that we're going to talk about, is coral. And this is coral that you would find in the ocean. And so coral are sessile. Sessile means they're fixed. They can't get up and move. And so they're going to be filter feeders. They're going to have to filter the food from the water. Also, when we start going up the evolutionary tree into these phyla, we're going to see that some of them can only eat what can fit in their mouth. If it's an earthworm, then they can't eat anything that's larger than what they can fit in their mouth. Certainly, we can eat things that are a lot larger than our mouth by taking small bites because we have what's called a hinged jaw, and that's a big deal. So as we go through these phyla, we're going to run into a whole lot of different organisms that are adapted to how they're able to meet and how they're able to take food in. Also, it's going to be different. Some of these animals do not have a digestive cavity. We have a very sophisticated digestive cavity. We have, it starts in our mouth with chewing. We have an esophagus that leads to our stomach, and our stomach and small intestine are breaking food down. And then, of course, we have a large intestine that deals with water absorption for elimination. A lot of these animals don't have that. They're very, very simple. So we're going to talk about a lot about digestion. All right, we have invertebrates, and there's two major classes of animals, and it's the invertebrates and the vertebrates. And this depends on whether you have a skeleton or not. Now, we know that a skeleton is supportive in nature. Well, for invertebrates, they have what's called an exoskeleton. Exo means on the outside, and skeleton means support. So they're actually having this hard outer covering, but it's not internal like ours is. So that's why it's called an exoskeleton. More often than not, when we get to the arthropods and we talk about exoskeletons a little bit more, their exoskeleton is going to be made of chitin, the same as what was in the cell wall of fungus. So an exoskeleton is a very hard or tough outer covering that provides a framework for their support that protects the soft body tissues, and it also protects them from predators. Very often, if a bird is trying to eat an insect and comes across that hard outer covering, it'll drop it or spit it out. So it can be protective, it can be defense, and then of course it's supportive. One thing about exoskeletons is that in order for the animal to grow, they're going to have to molt or shed, because the muscle attachment for an exoskeleton is to the inside. So as they flex what little muscles they have, then they can shed and they can end up getting a lot bigger one as they grow. Now, vertebrata is a huge class, and this class is designated by their endoskeleton. Endoskeleton means you have your skeleton on the inside. This is where we are. Our skeleton protects our internal organs. It provides us support, and our muscles are attached to our skeleton. So as we contract our muscles, we move a bone. It takes two muscles to move one bone. And so the internal organs is protecting, just think of your rib cage, it's protecting your heart and your lungs. It's providing support. If you didn't have a shoulder structure, a shoulder girdle and a pelvic girdle, there would be no attachment for the bones in your arms and in your legs. So our skeleton is very supportive. We're upright because of it. And it's internal brace for our muscles. Like I said, to move one bone, it takes two muscles, adductors and extensors, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But in order for us to move, our muscles have to pull against this framework. As we grow, our bones grow with us, so we don't have to go through a period of molting or shedding because our bones are going to grow with us. Movement is another feature we will talk a lot about. The evolution of nerve and muscle tissues enables an animal to move in ways that are more complex and faster. So with our nerves, we know that all sensory information goes to our brain and motor information comes away. So our nerves are constantly talking to our muscles in order to get us to move. This is why if we have trouble, if we have those neuromuscular disorders such as, ALS or muscular dystrophy or any of those where the brain is not talking correctly to the muscles and the nerves going to those muscles, then the muscles are going to be impeded and their movement is not going to be as smooth. So as we move through, we're going to see animals that have very little nerve tissue. When we talk about our jellyfish, for instance, all their nerve tissue is wound up in their stinging cells. That's nervous because that's a defense, get away from me, or else they can sting their prey. Some of the animals can move very quickly. If you think about a cheetah, the muscles have to be talking to the nerves in a very smooth manner at all times. It's very complex because they have to have quick bursts of movement. So some animals are built for very quick bursts, and some animals are better in the long run. They're not that fast, but they have endurance. So the movement in this kingdom, we have flight, unique to our birds. We're upright, we're bipedal, so we're on 2 feet. There are going to be quadrupeds, such as, all of everything that's on 4 feet. So as we move through the animal kingdom, we do have a lot of movement to talk about.